Hello my fantastic friends, welcome back in a new video. In this video we're gonna find out if using a hairdryer to dry watercolors is a good thing to do or not, and how to do it. I will be testing different drying techniques on different papers with different watercolors. So let's see what happens. Test number 1. So for this first test, I will be using arch paper, then a watercolor brush, of course some water, and of course watercolors. I'm gonna start with a wet on wet technique, and if you're not familiar with this technique, I'm gonna link some of my oldest videos just to explain a little bit more. Don't panic, you don't have to use a water spray thing like I'm doing here. I'm using the spray bottle just because I'm taking the watercolors directly from the pan, and that's a quicker way to do that. So start with clear water on the paper. Then take your color, and I'm using a cadmium red, which is a very bright orangey red. And I'm just tracing a line, and the water will do the rest for me. And right underneath it, I'm gonna paint a wet on dry. So with the same color, I'm gonna go on the dry paper. And here we go. And I'm gonna take this aside and let it dry naturally. Test number 2. So for this test, I'm gonna do the same thing and using the same supplies, so same paper and same colors. I'll start with a wet on wet, and then I'll go on with a wet on dry. Only this time I will be using the hairdryer. But how do I use it? I mean, how to use the hairdryer without ruining the paper, without altering the colors. So my method to do this is to keep the hairdryer quite distant from the paper, approximately, I would say at least 10 inches. But most important, moving it in a circular motion. This way you will fake in a natural drying. So test number 3. And for this test I will change my paper, and I will use a cellulose paper, but a very good one. This is the Vidalon by Hansen. But same colors as before, and I will repeat the process. But this time I will use the hairdryer in a very aggressive way. What I mean by aggressive, I mean not moving the hairdryer and keeping it at a very short distance from the paper. And as you can see, this is a complete disaster. So now I want to repeat the same process because I want to show you the difference between an aggressive use of the hairdryer and my method, which is much better. Remember, you have to keep moving the hairdryer and keep it distant from the paper. So here we go, comparing the two different drying methods, and you can already see the differences, can you? Last, I wanted to try The same thing with the Super Pro Extra Fine watercolors, always by Lukas, and these are called 1862, and I personally love them. I think they're amazing, and they're quite like the Schminke Horadam. And for this last test, I just let one dry naturally and the other one I used my method. So let's see the results and let's do our considerations. Test number 1 here. So on your left you will have the natural drying, and on your right you will see my method with the hairdryer. So as you can see, the colors are equally bright. I mean, they didn't change that much. The hairdryer didn't diminish the color, didn't fade the color. But the thing that I notice is on the natural side, the wet on wet looks much better because the little stain that you can see is much more evident and defined. Using the hairdryer will uniform everything, so you will lose all the definition of your stains, if it makes sense. Which is not right or wrong, it's just a choice, so you have to know this. So if you have the time to let it dry naturally, go for it, because it's always better. But if you don't, use the hairdryer with no concern. Only just pay attention how to use it. About test number 2, here you can clearly see the difference between an aggressive drying method and a more gentle method. I hope you can see that, but the aggressive drying method kind of faded the color more, without even mentioning the fact that you will move the water too much and everything will be a mess. And again, natural drying and my method. And again, you can see that the stains are remaining more defined on the natural side. And for the love of science, I made another test with a different color. So I used an ultramarine blue and I made my swatches here. On the upper line, I used an aggressive hair drying method, and on the bottom line, I just let it dry naturally. And yeah, you can see the difference here. So the natural one is much more vibrant and bright. And so the conclusion is, if you want to use the hairdryer, you can do that, but you have to pay attention to do that correctly. So this is it. I hope this video was useful for you. Let me know with comments and thumbs up. And if you liked the video, share the video and follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and blah blah blah. Same thing as always. And I will see you in my next video. Ciao!